Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video. In this video I'll be doing a review of American Ninja Warrior Season 11. So in this video I'll talk about my thoughts on the format changes, new obstacles, results. There's a lot to talk about. Let's just get into it. So I'm going to start this off by talking about the format changes. So the first one here I'm going to talk about is the rules of the Mega Wall, where last season you were given one attempt on the Mega Wall. If you failed, you had to return to the regular wall. This time it was an either-or situation, meaning that if you chose the Mega Wall, you would have 3 attempts on the Mega Wall with depreciating prize money, but you would never be able to return to the regular wall. I like this change. I mean, it adds a strategic element to the qualifying round. I think it makes the qualifying round a bit more interesting, though it does skew the results. I don't like the fact that someone who's going at the fastest pace ends up not in one of the top few spots because they went for the Mega Wall instead of the regular wall. But at the end of the day, I think the pros outweigh the cons, so I did end up liking this. And add on to that, we did also get the Power Tower, and that added a completely new layer to qualifying, and it gives the contestants a reason to go fast, which is something I really like because it's something we've been missing since the earlier seasons. What I also liked about this twist was that it also forced them to show the 2 fastest runs of the night to give people incentive to care about the Power Tower. And a lot of these people that were in the top 2 were people that would normally be cut or fast forwarded on the show. Now, one of the biggest shames here, though, was that most of the Power Towers were blowouts. I mean, the only interesting one was the Hunter Garrard versus David Campbell one. Again, that one was fun, but the other one's not as interesting. Now for the prizes from the Power Tower. The Speed Pass is fine. I mean, obviously, it's just guaranteed Vegas. It doesn't really change anything, so I'm fine with that. The Safety Pass is a bit more questionable for me. I mean, I don't love the idea of someone getting total victory after having already failed stages 1 or 2, and obviously that comes into effect this season. But, I mean, the person that gets it does have to earn it, so at least that's something. And then also, A&W's has been really prone to a lot of poorly designed obstacles in their courses. And I feel like this is kind of a counter to that. So at least give some people a second shot. So, I mean, it's a really big mixed bag for me. I still don't know where I really stand on it as a whole. But it definitely did help the results this season, and we wouldn't have a winner without it. Another change that they made this season was the amount of people that moved on from the city finals to Vegas, where instead of the top 15 plus 2 females, it's now only the top 12 plus 2 females plus the Speed Pass winner, meaning that there could be as few as 13 people from a city moving on. And I really don't like this. I mean, I am still a massive fan of Sasuke, and I love the tradition of 100 people taking on stage 1. It's something I wish they would go back to. They're not going to. They don't care. To be honest, for them, it's probably better that there isn't 100 people. And to be fair, I also know that part of the reason why there were less people was because to make room for the people that had the safety passes. But again, I prefer there to be 100 people, but it's not going to happen. Another rule change from this season that I don't love either is the switch back to the original final stage rules where only the fastest time gets the money. While it wouldn't have mattered this season anyway, I don't like the fact that someone can clear all 4 stages and get nothing. I mean, again, they changed it after the controversy of season 7. With seasons 8 through 10, they made it so that multiple clears had to share the money. So I don't get why that rule didn't stick here. I really wish it did, but I mean, they're going to do what they're going to do. And the final thing I'll talk about here before moving on to the actual qualifiers themselves is the new sideline reporter in Zuri Hall. And I mean, thank God for Zuri Hall. I mean, Christine Leahy was probably the most boring sideline reporter they could have possibly had. It didn't seem to have any passion for the actual show and was just there to collect a paycheck. Zuri definitely brought new energy to the interviews and was just a happier person in general. So overall, I'm really happy with that change. But now let's get to talking about the city qualifiers and the finals, starting off with LA. And I was really surprised how much damage the earlier obstacles did here, considering I feel like it was a relatively easy course. I mean, the shrinking steps were seemingly pretty easy obstacles, especially compared to the floating steps from previous years. Walk the plank tripped up a lot of people. And I mean, I was actually really surprised that was like the big ninja killer of this round because it didn't seem that difficult, but it was really just all about timing. And spring forward was just a modified version of the jumping bars. So like for that obstacle to be the cutoff point is ridiculous. There were some shockers, though. I mean, Adam Rail going out on Stair Hopper, that was pretty big. People like Flip and Kyle Soderman failing the Mega Wall. We had a really strong return to form for David Campbell, who was able to get second in qualifying. And as I mentioned before, the power tower between him and Hunter Gerard was just thrilling to watch. And because of this, the LA Qualifiers was probably my favorite pre-Vegas episode. But the LA Finals were just okay. I mean, there were a lot of fails on Leap of Faith, which I really liked as an obstacle, but I would debate that it was possibly too hard. But it was great to see Brian Kretsch clear the obstacle, having the best run of his career. So that was pretty cool to see. The Atlanta qualifiers had Off the Hook, which was a pretty mediocre obstacle, but I really liked the Ferris wheel. I mean, it was a bit slow. It did kind of ruin the pacing of the course, which was relatively quick, but it was fine. The most notable part of the episode, though, was Drew getting the Mega Wall and the Speed Pass. But outside of that, the episode was just okay. The Atlanta finals were kind of just okay as well. I mean, I thought the course was relatively easy. I mean, they showed, 5 clears and 3 more making it to the spider trap. The only shocking fail here was really Neil Craver at Block Run. But Drew does get the safety pass and completes the trifecta, so there's that. Now for Oklahoma City, we had the wing swing, which was relatively easy. I mean, we had the diving boards, which was a fun obstacle that obviously moved on to Vegas. And the coconut climb was pretty difficult. I didn't love the coconut climb, though. I mean, I just found it a really awkward obstacle, especially to dismount. But results-wise, I found this qualifier kind of uneventful. Again, Daniel Gill got the Mega Wall and the Speed Pass, as you would expect. But I guess it was kind of surprising to see Matisse Awadi fail the Mega Wall. But for the finals, again, relatively easy course. We had 5 clears as well here, with the top 2 being pretty predictable. Again, it was the Kid and Daniel Gill. But I was surprised to see the Kid actually win the safety pass over Daniel Gill. And there were a couple surprising fails from people like Brent Stephenson and Matthew Day, who didn't make it through. So now for Seattle-Tacoma, which was the first indoor course. I mean, who cares? Yeah, that was something. The Lunatik Ledges was a relatively easy obstacle as well, and really just a dumb name. I really hate that name, but whatever. I did like the barrel roll. It was a pretty interesting obstacle. Again, not a really difficult one, but a pretty uniquely designed one. The big fail from qualifying here was obviously Jeff Britton failing on the broken bridge. Though, I mean, to be fair, I wasn't that surprised. I mean, I was kind of expecting Jeff Britton to not do particularly well. The results outside of that were pretty standard, but Leif Suttenberg getting the fastest time was pretty surprising, especially when he did it under a minute, which I believe was the first time in years that someone finished qualifying in under a minute, so that was pretty impressive. But the finals were pretty underwhelming, where no one cleared. I mean, lightning bolts really took out a lot of top names. I mean, Lance Pekus and Jake Murray both failed there. The floating monkey bars were also brutal, taking out Sean Bryan, leaving only 3 to make it to Northwest Passage, which I thought was a pretty innovative modification to Iron Maiden and a pretty tough one, so I'm not that surprised that no one cleared it. Now for Baltimore, which had the dangerous curves, which, again, another obstacle that I didn't particularly care for the name. But it did seem like a pretty difficult obstacle and took out some pretty big names like John Alexis Jr. Some of the biggest names of this region failed at the Mega Wall, and I think it has something to do with the weather. I mean, a lot of people were just slipping early on the Mega Wall, so I feel like that's more than likely the case. We had Joe Morosky, Najee Richardson, and Chris Wachowski all fail at the Mega Wall, making the Power Tower really strange, where we had Dave Kavanaugh, who has been competing for a while but has never been a really big name, win the Power Tower against a rookie in Connor Galvin, who, again, no one knew who he was. So it was just a weird Power Tower. And then for the finals, it was just weird as well. I mean, the big ninja killer there was obviously the Angry Birds, which was a brutal obstacle. I mean, it's pretty much a more difficult version of the Leaps of Faith, and I really don't get what they were thinking of this. It's definitely the worst episode of the season. It's one of the worst possibly of all time. I mean, the fact that no one passed the 8th obstacle is ridiculous. And again, it's not even like the entire obstacle was brutally difficult. It was like that one jump. It's the one jump where you have to grab backwards. It's just like, it's such a finicky section. And it was really difficult to grab as well, because like it was a really thick ledge to grab onto without any grip on it. Unlike the Leaps of Faith, which actually had grips on it, it was a much easier obstacle. Like, this was just brutal. And also to have it after like Crank It Up and Dangerous Curves. Like, this was easily the most difficult city finals course of the season. And because of that, we do lose people like Jamie Ron. But again, Dave Kavanaugh had a really breakout run here, getting the speed pass and the safety pass from the city. So you gotta commend him for that. Now for Cincinnati, where we only had one new obstacle in the slingshot, but I actually really like this obstacle. I mean, it's a bit finicky at points, but it is a modification of the bar hop, and I thought it was a pretty interesting one to watch. We had some pretty strong females here, obviously, like Jessie Labreck and Michelle Warnke, who did clear qualifying. But I do think in the grand scheme of things, this was a relatively weak field in terms of people who I actually thought were going to be potential winners. I mean, this is another region that had a really weird power tower with Ethan Swanson, who is a top competitor. I mean, not someone who I think is really a threat to win at all, but definitely a top ninja. And then we got Jackson Twite, who, again, who? It was slightly anticlimactic where Ethan Swanson just kind of easily wins. But I did think the city finals episode was pretty strong. I mean, like, we just came from an episode that had no clears, and we go to an episode that has 7 clears, with 2 of them being women in, as I mentioned, Michelle Warnke and Jessie Labreck. And while I don't think Cincinnati was the most stacked field, the top competitors all performed well here. And to be fair, the course was pretty easy. I mean, the course definitely was the easiest of all the qualifying courses, with most obstacles being very technical over being physically exhausting. So as long as you were able to avoid making a mistake, you were more than likely going to clear. It was a fun episode nonetheless, and it was great to see that Michelle Warnke and Jessie Labreck finally perform as well as they could. I mean, again, only if Jesse Graff could get a course like this and clear as well. But that's all for the qualifying and city finals. Now we're on to Vegas. And let's do it. Let's start by talking about stage 1, which was pretty good. I thought stage 1 was actually the best probably ever been on AMW. I mean, they're still keeping the Sasuke 27 format, which I do hope they change next year because of the winter, but I mean, they probably won't. But we did get some new obstacles. I mean, Spin Your Wheels was definitely an improvement over the propeller bar, which had been there for forever. And it was also a pretty tricky obstacle on its own right. I like the modification, the tire run, as it felt a bit too easy last tournament. I really like the diving boards as well. It's a pretty tricky obstacle. Out of the returning obstacles, I mean, Archer Alley is fast, so at least there's that. I mean, I still love the Double Dipper. It's really fun. I mean, Jumping Spider and Warp Wall are still there. I could go without them, to be honest, at this point. And I think Warped Wall is something they're probably going to keep forever, but Jumping Spider, I feel like it pretty much needs to go. I mean, I don't need it there anymore. And I really don't like Twist and Fly. I mean, I don't like any of the Cargo Net final obstacles, but to add Lachey's before it is even more boring to me. But for the results, we had some pretty surprising fails. I mean, Flip's initial fail on the diving boards was a big shocker. Najee's fail on Tire Run was a pretty big shocker because obviously he's one of the top contenders. Travis Rosen retiring was a pretty disappointing thing to see, especially because he's been there since, A&W 2. Now, Jessie Labreck's fail was a pretty big shock to me because obviously we knew that there was going to be a lot of success this tournament. I was expecting Jessie Labreck to clear stage 1 easily, and for her to go out there was pretty surprising. And same goes for Jessie Graff, and just the fact that no woman ends up clearing stage 1 was pretty mind-blowing to me. Probably the biggest shocker of stage 1 was Drew's initial fail, which was really strange to see and is kind of disappointing considering what does end up happening later. And another one of the more shocking fails to me was also Sean Bryan, as I came into this season thinking Sean Bryan was going to be the winner. And to see him get taken out on the Jumping Spider due to an injury was pretty disappointing to see. Now for stage 2, which was incredibly nerfed. But to be honest, I didn't not enjoy watching it because of that. I mean, stage 2 has been the most ridiculously difficult course pretty much ever since A&W 8. So to see an easy stage 2 was a nice change of pace. I mean, I don't want this for every season, obviously, but I do think it was nice to see some stage 2 clears for once. But for the obstacles themselves, I mean, the Giant Walk the Plank was a fun opening obstacle that allowed for a pretty quick opening to the course. The Extension Salmon Ladder was really easy and just really dumb. I mean, it was essentially just a regular salmon ladder, but then they made some of the rungs slightly higher, I guess. I mean, it was really easy. But it was really funny to hear Matt and Akbar keep on talking the obstacle up when really it was just completely lame. The snapback was fine. I mean, it was an obstacle from city finals, but I actually liked the obstacle as a whole. Though, again, I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of the ninjas trained on the obstacle beforehand, so that kind of made it a bit easier for them. I don't get why they took out the break in between the salmon ladder and the snapback. I think that was a big factor on why so many people cleared the course as a whole. But again, they wanted to clear, so whatever. Swing Surfer was still there, still fun. I mean, they made a slight modification to the landing of it. I did enjoy that. And it did cause a couple fails. The Grim Sweeper was a really easy obstacle. and seemed to be more of a time waster than an actual obstacle. But I'll take that over like a ridiculously difficult obstacle like Wingnut Alley. And then we had the water walls, which still suck. I mean, I never liked the backstream in Sasuke, but the water walls are an even worse version of that. But overall, stage 2, the biggest issue with the course for me was the time limit. I mean, the time limit was 3 minutes, and they should have cut it to 2:30. I think 2:30 would have been the perfect time. I would have cut the finishers in about half. I think around 11 people would have ended up clearing. I think that's a good number, but instead we got 21, which is kind of on the ridiculous side. But again, results wise, as I said, we had a ridiculous amount of clears, and it was weird to hear Matt and Akbar keep on saying, oh, this is the best group we've ever had. It's like, no, it's the easiest course you've ever had. Again, while it was good to see success, it just got really ridiculous at points where we just kept on getting montage after montage of clear after clear after clear. And there was a shocking fail in between all these. I mean, Flip timing out was really heartbreaking to watch, as you just know how much he wanted it. And he's just failed stage 2 so many times already that it felt like this was finally his time to break through, but obviously it just didn't happen. We had other fails. I mean, like Matisse Wadi failing the Grim Sweeper, but that was like whatever. Dave Kavanaugh was a pretty big fail where he failed early twice. I mean, he had the safety pass, but then failed on the giant walk the plank, and then right after that on the salmon ladder, which was pretty big shocker for him, I feel like. But again, we had 21 clears. It was weird to see. Now for stage 3, which was also made easier than previous seasons, but not by as ridiculous of an amount as stage 2 was. Grip and tip was a pretty easy obstacle. I mean, it was relatively slow though, so because I didn't really care for it, but it was fine. And the same goes with a lot of the earlier obstacles like Iron Summit. I mean, Crazy Clocks was obviously quicker, but it was pretty easy. The first big challenge really comes at the Ultimate Cliffhanger, which also got a big nerf. They took out an entire jump from the Ultimate Cliffhanger. I really hope the Ultimate Cliffhanger just goes away at this point. I don't mind there being a new version of the Cliffhanger. I just hate the concept of the Ultimate Cliffhanger at this point for A&W, where it's this massive, like, make it or break it sort of obstacle. I mean, obviously we saw a lot of people clear it this tournament, so maybe that'll make them think, okay, yeah, we got to change it up. But it's kind of been the big obstacle of stage 3 ever since, what, A&W 2? I mean, for a while. And it's like, I think we should just get away from it at this point, especially because it's not doing nearly as much damage as it used to, though it is still obviously a really difficult obstacle. Pipe Dream is kind of a weird mix of the Pole Grasper and the Sidewinder from Sasuke. I mean, it's a strange obstacle, but it did take out a few people, so it's fine. Cane Lane is fine. Again, a very finicky obstacle in my opinion, but again, took out a good chunk of people. And finally, we have the Flying Bar, which I think is a pretty riveting final obstacle for Stage 3, in theory. I think the problem is that these ninjas have trained on it so much that I find it very hard to see someone actually failing it at this point unless they're like really, really exhausted. But obviously the two people that we saw get there this time had no trouble with it. But now for the notable fails. I mean, there were some Cliffhanger fails. I mean, Michael Torres' fail at the Cliffhanger was really heartbreaking to watch. He came so close. I mean, he was right on the landing platform. I mean, it's really like the closest fail on the Cliffhanger that we've seen since, what, David Campbell in the AW3. And then right after that, we got a pretty similar run from Ethan Swanson as well, whose grip gave out on the final swing. I was surprised to see Lucas Reale clear the Ultimate Cliffhanger, but he failed the Pipe Dream anyway. Joe Morovsky's fail on Cane Lane was pretty surprising to me, to a degree. I mean, again, the edit wasn't really there for a Joe Morovsky win, in my opinion. But I could have still seen him getting to the final stage. But to see him make a really costly mistake on that final jump on Cane Lane, where he lands on the edge of the track and just slips right off, that was pretty shocking to me. Seth Rogers is another one that I'm surprised it did as well as he did. I was surprised to see a big guy like him get through both the Cliffhanger and Pipe Dream, so that was pretty impressive. Adam Rails' fail was pretty heartbreaking, where he pretty much cleared Cane Lane. I mean, if we're going by A&W rules, he did clear Cane Lane. By Sasuke rules, he technically didn't, but whatever. Again, he got his foot on the landing platform. It's just he had no strength to pull himself up, and he just goes out right near the end. And Josh Salinas' fail was really strange as well, where he just fails almost right away on the first obstacle. But for the people that cleared, it was pretty obvious. I mean, Drew Drashall and Daniel Gill, I wasn't surprised at all they were the two to make it to the final stage. The edit had been pointing that way the entire time, in my opinion. One of them had to be the winner. So then we finally had the showdown on the final stage, and Drew went first, and as expected, he cleared with about 2 seconds on the clock. So it came down to whether or not Gil was going to be able to beat him, and surprisingly, Gil fails the final stage. He fails right at the top. I mean, he was probably, a couple seconds away? But he actually fails, meaning Drew is the only one to clear all 4 stages, and he obviously becomes the winner of the $1 million and the next American Ninja Warrior or whatever. But either way, I'm really happy for Drew. I mean, Drew is one of the most dedicated ninjas out there. He's definitely one of the best, as he's shown on both A&W and Sasuke. But I am really disappointed that this was the season that he finally won. I mean, the fact that he needed to use his safety pass is something that is really disappointing, and his run would have ended on tire run if it wasn't for that safety pass. Now, I won't go as far as to say, oh, his win is illegitimate like some other people are, because at the end of the day, he did clear all 4 stages, and if he didn't have that safety pass, he more than likely runs that stage 1 a bit differently and a bit more cautiously. So I'm not going to go and say Drew doesn't deserve this, because he did do every obstacle on the course, but it is kind of disappointing that this was the circumstances here. But at the end of the day, Drew is one of the most skilled ninjas around, and it really was just a matter of time until we won one of these shows. So overall, I like this season. I thought they made some great modifications during qualifier and the city finals that made good TV. They also minimized the amount of sob stories, so that annoyed me less so than in other seasons. Stage 1 of Vegas was probably the best it's ever been in terms of course design, and it had some pretty fun results as well. Stages 2 and 3 were obviously a massive downgrade in terms of difficulty, but not a completely unwarranted one. Though, again, Stage 2's was a bit extreme. Drew's winning is a pretty satisfying conclusion, though the safety pass and the nerfing of the course did lead the way for that. So overall, this is definitely one of my favorite seasons of A&W in a while. I think it's definitely my favorite since Season 7. I think Season 7 might still be a bit higher than this one at the end of the day. I mean, I haven't really done a season ranking for A&W, as a lot of the seasons just blend together for me over time. But maybe I'll do a video and do some research on it for the future. But for now, that's pretty much my opinion of Season 11. That's the video. Thank you for watching.